The morning sun had barely risen above the quiet town when the Iron Hawks rumbled down the old county road, their engines echoing like rolling thunder across the still air. Sundays were their peaceful days, the rare mornings when the world felt lighter and the weight on their shoulders eased just enough for them to breathe. Axel rode at the front, his massive frame steady on the bike as he led his crew with the silent authority of a man who'd lived through too many storms. The wind caught the ends of his hair, the leather of his vest creaked with each shift in his grip, and the smell of pine drifted across the open fields. It should have been an easy day, just a charity ride to raise money for kids in town. But the universe had a different plan. As the group slowed near a small residential lane, Axel felt the faintest tug on his vest. At first, he thought it was just a branch or a snag on the air, but when he glanced down, his heart slammed into his ribs. A tiny hand, small, trembling, desperately clinging, was attached to his arm. When he braked softly and turned, he saw her. A little girl, barefoot on the pavement, her face streaked with tears and dirt, her knees scraped raw, gripping him with the force of someone who had run out of options. "Help," she gasped, her voice cracking. "Please, Uncle hit Mommy. He's hurting her. He won't stop." That was the hook, the moment that snapped the world in half and forced every biker to freeze in place. Engines died. Boots hit the pavement. The entire Iron Hawks crew turned toward the fragile sound of panic wrapped inside that tiny voice. Axel jumped off his bike and knelt in front of her. She looked about 6 years old, maybe younger. Her pink shirt was torn at the shoulder, her hands smudged with dirt, and she was shaking so hard her teeth nearly chattered. But her eyes, big, wet, terrified, were what hit Axel hardest. They were filled with the kind of fear a child should never know. "What's your name?" Axel asked softly, trying to keep his voice steady. "Lila," she whispered, gripping a fistful of his vest like she might fall into the earth if she let go. "Mommy told me to run but I couldn't leave her." He felt something old and painful twist inside his chest. Memories he kept buried deep began clawing their way up. Memories of a little girl he once held, a family he once had, a world that disappeared when life dealt him a blow he never fully recovered from. That past echoed through him as he scooped Lila into his arms. Behind them, the house she pointed to sat quietly with its door cracked open. But inside that silence, something darker moved, shouts, thuds, and muffled cries leaking across the yard like a horror desperately trying to stay concealed. The bikers didn't need instructions. They tightened formation around Axel and Lila, a wall of leather, steel, and unspoken rage. A few neighbors peeked around corners, watching from behind curtains as the Iron Hawks, known for their charity work but feared for their fierce loyalty, stepped toward the house as if every shadow inside was about to pay a debt. Axel lowered himself and brushed a strand of hair off Lila's forehead. "You did the right thing coming to us," he said gently. "We're going to help your mom. I promise." Her lip quivered. "You're not scared?" Axel shook his head slowly. "Not of anything that hurts kids." She clung tighter. The moment Axel crossed the threshold, the smell of beer and broken furniture hit him. The living room looked like a war zone, overturned chairs, shattered glass, and a lamp lying sideways with its shade crushed in. Somewhere deeper in the house, a woman's shaky whimpers broke the silent dread. Then the man appeared, tall and shaven, reeking of alcohol and aggression. He stumbled into the living room wearing an expression of pure irritation. When he saw Lila clinging to Axel's chest, his face twisted with anger. "You little brat," he spat, pointing a finger at her. "Didn't I tell you?" He didn't finish, because the moment he looked up, he saw the 10 bikers filling his living room doorway, silent, still, and full of the kind of wrath that made grown men rethink every decision they had ever made. "What the hell is this?" the man snapped, trying to sound confident but failing miserably. "Who are you people?" Axel didn't answer him right away. His eyes were fixed on the woman curled near the back wall. Lila's mother. She was clutching her ribs, her face swollen, her breathing shaky. The bruises on her arms looked fresh, some still deep purple, others fading to sickening shades of yellow. She stared at Axel with a mixture of embarrassment and relief, as though she wasn't sure she deserved rescue. One of the bikers, a tall man named Roach, stepped forward and pointed at her. "She needs medical help," he said quietly. The drunk man scoffed. "She's fine." She fell. It's none of your damn business. Axel finally turned toward him, Lila still held tightly in his arms. His voice came out low, controlled, and deadly calm. Your niece ran into the road barefoot and crying because she thought her mother might die. That makes it our business. The man barked a laugh, a pitiful attempt at intimidation. You don't know what happened here. Axel took a step forward. I know enough. The drunk swung his arm out as if he might take a swing, or grab Lila, or try something stupid. But before he could make contact, Roach grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall so fast the pictures rattled on their hooks. Try again, Roach growled, and you'll be eating drywall. The man froze, his bravado evaporating. Another biker moved toward the corner where Lila's mother sat and knelt beside her, speaking softly so she wouldn't flinch. Ma'am, you're safe now. She began to cry harder, not from fear, but from the sudden collapse of everything she'd been holding together. He was going to kill me, she whispered. If Lila hadn't run. Axel felt Lila bury her face in his neck at those words. He rubbed her back gently. She's a brave kid, he murmured. And you're safe now. The next few seconds happened quickly. The bikers restrained the man with zip ties they kept for emergencies, dragging him into the front yard where he could no longer harm anyone. Neighbors had begun gathering now, some pretending they weren't watching, others openly staring as the group of leather-clad riders brought an abusive man to his knees in the grass. Axel dialed 911 calmly. Domestic violence, he told the operator. Victims injured. We have the suspect restrained. 5 minutes. That was all it took from the moment Lila grabbed Axel's arm to the moment the nightmare was over. When the sirens echoed in the background, Axel walked outside with Lila still holding onto him, her head resting on his shoulder like she had found the one place the world couldn't reach her. Her small body trembled less now, exhaustion setting in after the adrenaline burned out. Is Mommy safe now? She asked quietly, her voice weak and afraid of the answer. Axel shifted her gently so he could look into her eyes. Yes, sweetheart, she's safe. Thanks to you. She let out a breath she'd been holding for too long, her tiny hand brushing the patch on his vest like it was a symbol of something bigger than she could understand. Police arrived shortly after, taking statements while paramedics attended to Lila's mother. The abusive man tried to bluster again, shouting excuses and screaming about family business, but the officers ignored him, shoving him into the back of the cruiser while he continued spitting profanity. Lila's mother was taken to the ambulance, but before the doors closed, she reached out to Axel with a shaky hand. Please, take care of her for a bit. Just until my sister gets here. She trusts you. Axel nodded once. He didn't hesitate. He didn't ask questions. Lila had chosen him as her protector the moment she ran into the road and grabbed his arm. And he wasn't about to betray that trust. As the ambulance drove off, the bikers gathered around Axel and Lila. One placed a blanket around her shoulders. Another handed her a bottle of cold water. Someone else gave her a soft smile as he wrapped her scraped knee with a clean bandana. They looked intimidating to the world, but to that little girl, they had become her guardians. Axel held her until her trembling slowed, until her breath steadied, until her fear receded just enough for her to speak again. I thought no one would come, she whispered. Axel felt his throat tighten. If you ever need us again, he said, you come find the Iron Hawks. We'll always come. Lila nodded and tucked her head against him, finally letting her eyelids drift shut. She fell asleep wrapped in the arms of a man who looked like a storm but held her like she was the most fragile thing in the world. And as Axel stood there, surrounded by his crew, he realized something he hadn't felt in years: purpose, soft and fierce, blooming inside his once hardened heart. He would protect her. He would protect her mother. He would make sure this never happened again. The hook of the story had already captured them all, pulling every biker into a mission they didn't ask for but couldn't walk away from. And in that moment, standing in the middle of a quiet street with a sleeping child in his arms, Axel understood something he had forgotten long ago. Heroes don't always wear badges. Sometimes they ride motorcycles. The hospital waiting room buzzed with the low hum of machines and muted conversations, but for Axel, everything felt strangely quiet. Lila sat curled against his side, wrapped in the oversized leather jacket one of the bikers had draped over her shoulders. Her small fingers clung to the front of Axel's vest, as if letting go would somehow make the world unsafe again. Her mother had been taken in for scans, and the doctors promised to update them soon. For now, Axel just sat there, staring at the pale blue floor tiles, listening to Lila's shaky breaths. Every so often, she would glance up at him, making sure he was still there. It was then, in that sterile room with its cold fluorescent lights, that the hook inside Chapter 2 struck. The moment Lila whispered, "If you didn't come, Mommy would be gone," her voice trembling as though she were reliving every scream and every blow. It was the kind of moment that held the viewers' hearts hostage, forcing them to stay until the very end of the story, because no child should ever speak a sentence like that. Axel didn't know how to answer right away. He swallowed the knot in his throat and placed his hand gently on her back. "You saved her," he said softly. "You did something incredibly brave." "But I was scared," she replied, her voice thin and cracking. "I didn't know where to run. I just saw your bikes and, I don't know why, but I thought you would help." Axel looked down at her, fragile, exhausted, covered in bruises that weren't on her skin but deep inside her tiny heart. He wondered how many times she had wished for someone to step into her home and stop the chaos. The thought hit him hard. "You listen to your heart," he whispered. "Sometimes that's what leads you to the right people." As the minutes turned to hours, the rest of the Iron Hawks arrived one by one, filling the waiting room with the quiet presence of leather jackets, worn boots, and the unmistakable scent of gasoline and wind. But there was something softer in the air now, something protective, something unspoken. Even the nurses paused at the sight of them, surprised by how gently such intimidating men moved around the exhausted child. Roach brought her a small cup of orange juice. Tank sat across the room, carving a wooden little figure with a pocketknife, whittling it into the shape of a bird to distract her. Bones found a small plush bear in the gift shop and placed it in her lap without saying a word. These men, who outsiders often assumed were dangerous, now hovered like guardian angels disguised in tattoos and steel. When the doctor finally walked in, the room collectively leaned forward. The woman smiled gently. "She's stable," she said, and Lila's shoulders slumped in relief. "Multiple bruises, 2 ribs fractured, but no internal bleeding. She'll need some days to rest and recover emotionally, but she's going to be okay." Lila's breath left her lungs in a shaky rush. She pressed the little bear to her chest. Axel felt her body relax, finally releasing the terror that had been lodged inside her since the moment the first shout echoed through their home. "Can I see her?" she asked softly. "To keep her calm, we'll bring her out once she's awake enough," the doctor replied. "But for now, she needs to rest. And it seems like you have good company here watching over you." The doctor's eyes lingered on Axel with a warm kind of gratitude, the kind that acknowledged without words the gravity of what he and his crew had done. As more time passed, Lila slowly began to talk, quietly, in fragments, about things that should never have happened in a child's life. She spoke of how the uncle had moved in a few months ago, how he'd changed after losing his job, how her mother tried to keep him calm but failed. More often than not, Axel listened, jaw tight, each detail lighting a fire inside him. "It's not your fault," Axel repeated whenever her voice trembled. "Nothing about this was your fault." Eventually, the hospital doors opened, and Lila's aunt rushed in, breathless, panicked, tears streaming down her cheeks. She froze when she saw Lila surrounded by the Iron Hawks, all standing instinctively in a protective half-circle. "Lila," she cried, dropping her purse as she scooped the little girl into her arms. "Sweetheart, I got here as fast as I could. Are you hurt?" "I'm okay," Lila whispered. "Axel helped me. The bikers helped Mommy." Her aunt turned toward Axel, her face overwhelmed with emotion. "I don't know what you did, but thank you. Thank you for not walking away." Axel shook his head gently. "She came to us. We just did what anybody should have done." But the aunt looked around at the other people in the waiting room, at the empty chairs, at the way no one else had stepped in. Not the neighbors, not the passers-by listening to the shouting. No one except this intimidating group of men with soft hearts. "You'd be surprised," she whispered. "Not everyone would have cared." Axel didn't argue. He just nodded. Lila insisted on staying awake until they brought her mother out from recovery. When the nurse finally wheeled her into the waiting area, Lila ran forward, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her mother opened her arms despite the pain, pulling her daughter close, sobbing into her hair. "You're safe, Mommy," Lila whispered. "They helped us." Her mother's eyes lifted toward Axel. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, voice trembling. I thought he would kill me." Axel felt something inside him soften and break and rebuild all at once. "You don't owe us anything," he said. "But you're not alone anymore. Not today. Not ever again." The Iron Hawks walked them to the car when the aunt was ready to take them home. Before leaving, Lila turned back to Axel, her eyes shining with tears. She rushed toward him and wrapped her little arms around his waist. "I'm going to miss you," she said softly. Axel knelt, swallowing the lump in his throat. "You'll see us again," he promised. "We're not going anywhere." She fiddled with the bandana on her wrist. "Do you promise?" He nodded. "On my life." She hugged him again, tighter this time. A hug filled with gratitude, relief, and something pure enough to heal even the oldest wounds. After they drove away, the Iron Hawks stood for a long moment in silence. The hospital parking lot felt strangely empty without her small presence. Roach finally cleared his throat. "We're not done helping them," he said gruffly. Axel agreed. That very night, the bikers gathered at their clubhouse and arranged a fundraiser, one that exploded through social media. Within hours, donations poured in. Groceries, gift cards, secured housing, counseling services, support from organizations that specialized in domestic violence recovery. People who had witnessed the bikers intervene earlier spread the story far and wide. Stories of rough-looking men delivering gentle justice moved the town. The sheriff publicly thanked them, reassuring everyone that the uncle would face the full force of the law. Axel didn't care for praise, but he accepted the sheriff's handshake because it meant more eyes were now watching over Lila and her mother. Days passed, and one afternoon, as sunlight streamed over the charity event the Iron Hawks had organized, Lila arrived with her mother and aunt. She wore a clean dress, her hair in neat braids, and a shy smile that melted every biker's heart. She ran straight to Axel and held out her wrist. The bandana was still there. "See," she said proudly. "I kept it." Axel smiled, kneeling so he could tie it more securely. "Looks like it's lucky." "It is," she said. "It brought me back to you." Her mother stepped forward, tears in her eyes, stronger now than the fragile woman they found on the floor that terrible day. "I want to say something," she announced to the gathered crowd. "People think angels have wings. But sometimes, they have engines." The bikers chuckled softly, humbled, touched, unsure how to accept such heartfelt praise. Axel didn't speak. He didn't need to. Everything he wanted to say was in the way he looked at Lila. Safe, smiling, healing, and how she reached for his hand without hesitation. Their story didn't end with violence. It didn't end in fear. It ended with a new beginning. A new home. A safer life. A bond that couldn't be broken. And for the first time in years, Axel felt like the world made sense again. Because a little girl had believed in him. And he had refused to let her down. If you'd like, I can also write a powerful closing message for the video. Add emotional tags. Craft a cinematic YouTube outro. Just tell me.